We're going to go ahead and call the meeting of the Bloomington City Council to order. If everyone will please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Mathey?
Here.
Councilmember Bolin?
Here.
Councilmember Mwambwe?
Here.
Councilmember Emig?
Present.
Councilmember Painter?
Here.
Councilmember Carrillo?
Here.
Councilmember Crable?
Here.
Councilmember Bray? Here. Mayor Renner?
Here. And then we do need a motion as we're going, before we begin, to permit Alderman Black to participate virtually. So moved. Moved by Councilmember Mathey. Is there a second?
Second.
So a second by Councilmember Carrillo. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Mathey?
Yes.
Councilmember Bolin?
Yes.
Councilmember Mwambwe?
Yes.
Councilmember Emig?
Yes.
Councilmember Painter?
Yes.
Councilmember Carrillo?
Yes.
Councilmember Crable?
Yes.
Councilmember Bray? Yes.
So Scott, you're legit. Can you hear us? Can you hear us? Good.
Can you guys hear me? Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, you're clear. Thank you. All right. At this point, we're going to start with recognitions and appointments, and we have the presentation of Police Chief Dan Donath, and Dan actually has already been sworn in. He was sworn in the day that he was appointed, but we're going to have a second swearing in, and actually, I would love it if we could have all of our men and women in uniform. If you'd come back behind us, behind the dais, so that we can get all of you in this picture. And I do want to say what I had mentioned to a few of the police officers before this meeting. The appointment of Chief Donath has spurred quite a few people over the last week or so to very specifically tell me what a great police force that we have and how confident they are in the great job that our men and women in uniform do for us. And not that I don't get compliments from time to time, but pretty much everywhere I've gone, I've gotten compliments. And so, Chief, you got a great department, and we expect great things from you, but no pressure. Okay. If you come forward to be sworn in again. Thank you.
I, Dan Donath,
Having been appointed to the office of Police Chief in the City of Bloomington,
Police Chief in the City of Bloomington,
in the County of McLean,
in the County of McLean,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and faithfully discharge the duties of
and faithfully discharge the duties of
the office of Police Chief
the office of Police Chief
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Thank you. I don't know if they want pictures of you doing your,
Okay, all right.
So what the chief just asked is if his wife could come forward and pin him, so.
And we practiced this last night.
Now the pressure's on.
She knows how they works now.
I'm going to leave that for you right now.
Okay, thank you. official business to take care of tonight. So, but thank you everyone for coming out. My mom and dad are here tonight, and my wife and friends and other people out here to support me. So thank you everyone. I appreciate it. And thank you to all the officers for coming tonight and our assistant chiefs for being here tonight to support us. The mayor's correct. We have a fantastic police department, and we do great work. We really do. And I've told them that. So we will continue doing that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we actually have a proclamation recognizing Raksha Bandhan, the Day of Universal Brotherhood and Unity, and I believe I have someone here coming up to accept this award, this proclamation. Shri, good to see you.
Thank you.
Gentleman here who moved here when he was 4. It's a private joke, sorry. But this is a proclamation recognizing Raksha Bandhan, the Day of Universal Brotherhood and Unity. Whereas traditionally Raksha Bandhan has been a celebration of the bond between a brother and a sister celebrated by Hindus, Jains, Buddhists, and Indians, and whereas this day also signifies caring for the needy and weak in the community, thus promoting brotherhood and unity among all sections of society, whereas the Hindu community and youth have been sharing this celebration with the public officials of the Bloomington Normal Twin Cities for many years, and whereas this occasion has been an opportunity to show gratitude for all those who facilitate education, law, and justice, peace, prosperity, harmony, and care for all. Now, therefore, I, Terry Renner, Mayor of the City of Bloomington, do hereby recognize Raksha Bandhan, the Day of Universal Brotherhood and Unity, and encourage everyone to embrace the spirit of this special occasion. Thank you so much, Shri.
Thank you. Can I just...
Absolutely.
I think the proclamation says it all. But on behalf of our community, we really and sincerely and deep from our hearts want to thank the city council as well as the mayor for being so kind to our community and recognizing this wonderful day, which is a long tradition with us. At the same time, I simply want to say, in the interest of time, it was such a wonderful view when all the officers were here. And as a community, we are extremely grateful to all those who make this city a wonderful place, all those who serve in law and order, in judiciary, in education, in city administration, and anywhere else to make life a better life for this city, for this wonderful city. And the rest is all said here. So on behalf of the community, and I also like to recognize, they would just stand up here, all these youth, some of them are here, who really make this project year after year a wonderful one. And as you know, we visit with the police superintendent, the school superintendent, the mayors, and all of them, and we find this extremely, extremely beneficial to our community and to our youth. And thanks again. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Next, we have public comment, and just to clarify, if you want responses, either from me or elected officials or some of our appointed officials, we have a mayor's open house on Friday from 4:30 to 5:30, and that's where we can engage in dialogue and perhaps get answers and problem solved. This is an opportunity for you to just address the council, and I'm going to go ahead and read these in groups of 2. There are really only 4 here, but we have Aaron Lene and then Serena Fish. Aaron?
So, somebody lost the war on weed. Ha ha. You as a council, really do need to expedite the buying, selling, and growing of cannabis as soon as possible. You need to get the cops to leave people alone. It needs to happen. It needs to happen before January 1st because they lost the war. It's come to an end. The war on drugs is coming to an end. It needs to stop now. Too many people and dogs have been shot. It needs to end. People smoke this herb to get by on this earth in peace and harmony. It is a holy herb to many, many different religions. It's a religion issue. It's not just a drug. And I think that if you guys sell liquor in all of these stores in town, if people can freely go down there to the bar and get drunk, drive, fall asleep at the wheel, puke in every single business's doorway, people can smoke herb at their houses or wherever and be at peace. And that's what needs to happen. You need to make this task force happen, and you need to make sure that you have consumers on that task force. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Serena Fish and then R.J. McCracken.
Good evening. Hard to follow. It's going to be a law on January 1st. Unfortunately, it can't be today because there are too many questions on how things are going to be handled. There are too many questions on banking, policing, rulings, management of the businesses, who can get a license, who can't get a license. However, it is extremely important to our community and the fact that we are stewards for 25,000 additional people, students at our two universities. It's important that you as a council make those decisions, not a task force, not individual people, but you as a council together work this out. It's coming, it is here, but please be careful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. R.J. McCracken and then Scott Steinley.
Thank you for your time. I'd like to commend the city on selecting an excellent police chief, and you might comment that in a former life I might have lost it sitting in this room with all those police officers, but I'm very glad to see our beautiful police officers doing great work here. I have two things to bring up. First is consent item E, the consideration for purchasing two vehicles. I understand that it's through the Illinois purchasing contract, but I think it's a real shame that our city is going to send $64,000 100 miles north instead of purchasing from one of our own dealerships where one of our salesmen might get the commission and spend it here in town. And I just hate to see that much money leave despite how much we may be saving. Well, are we really saving it? Additionally, obviously, no matter your opinion on the passing of the marijuana laws, obviously this task force is going to be something that's going to evaluate how important it is and what the impacts on our community are going to be. So whether you disagree, whether you agree, please pass and get us the information we need to make the right decisions and find out how we can maximize revenues in our area, where I think a lot of other areas are turning to fear and rejecting it. And there's a lot to be gained. We've seen a lot gained in Colorado. We've seen a lot gained in Oregon. And there's no reason we shouldn't be at the forefront instead of, jumping back 50 years in time and being afraid of something that makes people happy. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, Scott Steinley.
My first comment tonight is regarding Connect Transit. I feel that there was a bus today that it was 1802, and it was approximately 11 o'clock this morning. He was eating while driving. Now, if that's what you call professionalism, I've got news for all of you. You know, you can't text while driving, but yet you can eat while driving. That's distracted driving. Distracted driving is distracted driving. The other thing is the city has plenty of money to give Tim Gleason a big raise, yet we don't have money to fix our Cotton Pickens roads. They're being done, I know, but they're not all done. All sidewalks should have been handicapped accessible in 1990. This is 2019, 29 years later. I wonder if somebody would be 29 years late in paying their property taxes, if their property would still be there. You know good and well they wouldn't, Terry. If somebody would be 29 years late in paying their tuition to Westland, they wouldn't be in there. They'd be long gone, and you know it. And it's amazing that city administration is not getting any bigger. Whether Tim wants Billy there or not, it's amazing that before Tim, we had the deputy city manager at the government center, didn't we? Maybe Tim needs to give up part of his space, you need to give up part of your space, and make room for Billy. If Tim wants Billy here. Either that or ship him back to Decatur where he came from. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move right on to our consent agenda. Are there any items that any member of the council would like to have removed from the consent agenda for separate consideration? Councilmember Boland.
7C.
7C. Any other items? Okay. I'm looking to Scott. Scott, I've got a little bit of a problem here. I
can't help you, Terry. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Scott. Not you, Scott. It's not. But show voting results. Oh,
You missed me
pardon me.
for pulling something. I want
Press display vote, maybe?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, you want to pull 7E?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. I'm just was worried about this as we were voting. Okay.
Yeah, I would ask them to pull 7E.
Okay. 7C and 7E. All right. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented with the exception of items 7C and 7E? Moved by Councilmember Painter. Is there a second?
A second.
Seconder-in-chief, Councilmember Milawamwe. If everyone will go ahead and vote, and then hopefully this will, it looks like it's working. Councilmember Black, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 9-0. There are no nays to announce, Madam Clerk. And, okay. Well, as long as it's working, even if it's showing, I'm going to start in the order in which they were pulled. Item 7C, Councilmember Boland.
Yeah, I'm going to vote yes to approve the purchase of these garbage trucks, but I have a question because on the bills and payrolls, a charge was put forth by Henson Disposal, and I'm curious as to how Henson fits into the disposal of solid waste. Now, Jim answered the question with we have contracts for disposal of street sweepings and I guess excavation spoils, and then also collection from residential homes that's dropped off at the Citizens Convenience Center. But I guess what I'm asking is where, once the garbage is picked up and it's brought to either the landfill or the convenience center, where does Henson fit in? Do they come and pick up the garbage? Do we drop the garbage at the landfill or at Henson's? Is this all recycle? Does it include brush? Those are the questions.
I'll take a swing at this. On the bulk, the city takes bulk picked up at the curb straight to Henson. Bulk dropped at the customer convenience center is placed in roll-off containers that is picked up daily by Henson. And then on brush, the city takes brush picked up at the curb straight to Henson, but then brush that is dropped off at the customer convenience center is consolidated and then taken to Henson by city staff.
Are these contracts going to expire soon and possibly be able to be renegotiated? $20,000 a week seems a lot for the service that we get. Can we go drop off directly instead of having Hanson come here?
I'm going to actually take part of that question. Bob, if you would, Bob's the Assistant Public Works Director, will stand in for Jim, who's out for training. But actually, there's been an internal discussion, and it's something that we should do on many, if not all things. Customer Convenience Center was expanded into its current form a couple of years ago. We're at a point, I've talked about this with Jim Karch, we need to assess, is this working as we thought it would or should? And when you talk about the fees that go to Henson in this case, that's a part of that discussion as well. Bob?
Yeah, I'll just add on to that. Good evening, everybody. We have seen an increase in the use of the Citizen Convenience Center since we switched our bulk waste pickup. We've also seen about the same amount at the curbside. So it's a good thing. It helps us maintain our city. Hopefully, as you're driving through, you can see that we are getting to that, and it provides a beautiful environment. We always have a chance to renegotiate or to bid slightly differently when the contracts come up. I don't have the dates that they all expire, but between the couple that we've talked about already, we have 3 or 4 more other ones that fit into the solid waste program. So they all have differing vendors. They always have differing endpoints, and we can certainly consider whatever service level or philosophy that the council would like to direct us in. You're welcome.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, or a motion?
I'll move to accept as presented.
Okay, is there a second? Second by Council Member Crable. So any other discussion? Go ahead and vote. Alderman Black?
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0. There are no nays to announce, Madam Clerk. Go away. There we go. Okay. All right. Next, we move to item 7E as an egg, and I'm going to turn that over to Councilmember Carrillo.
And I guess I'm just going to ask Bob to probably come back. Sorry about that, Bob. Yeah, I just wanted to echo the concern that was raised by Mr. McCracken in public comment in terms of why we decided to go with an out-of-state company when there were 3 or 4 bids that I saw that were in-state and neighboring communities. And then just make a comment that, in the future it would be helpful to know that reasoning because people who do look at the agenda before these meetings, like I have that question often, is like, why aren't we contracting in town more? So I'd like to just maybe in the future see some of those things like addressed so that it's transparent and out there and we can avoid some of those questions.
So we follow the procurement policy for the city of Bloomington. One of the options are to use the state contract bids or the source bids to provide the most economical choice to purchase vehicles and other things alike. I know that there's been conversations with the city manager. He's asked us to look into some potential changes to that philosophy. I'm certain we'll work through that with legal and get a little bit more detail. We're working through that with our fleet department. And now we always look for the most appropriate way to be good stewards of our money. There are opportunities to look a little differently, and we're going to do that in the future. But for now, this is the most economical way to purchase those vehicles.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. And then is there a motion to approve or disapprove this particular purchase?
Terry, if I may.
Yeah. Oh, yep.
Yeah.
Councilmember
Just
Black.
yes, from the sky. Yeah, if I'm recalling correctly, is it 5% with business and 5% we defer to local purchasing? Is that how that works, or am I
We do
remembering
have
the number
local
correctly?
purchasing ordinance. Is it 5%?
I thought it was
looking
5.
to Mr. Juergens.
A joint purchase is exempt from that. So
A joint purchase is exempt from that, Councilmember Black.
look up the exact
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
A joint purchase is exempt from the local preference
Ah.
ordinance.
Gotcha. Okay.
Mr. Jurgens is looking up.
Hey, Mayor.
Yeah, please.
Just to piggyback off of a comment that Bob made, this also was an internal discussion recently where we're going to take the additional step, offer the vendor, the local dealerships an opportunity to bid our vehicles. And if they come in $2,000, $7,000 higher, it's going to be up to the council that you could choose to stay within the city. But oftentimes you find municipalities, doesn't mean that we have to do it this way. We'll take the state bid. It's already got the specs for the vehicle. Oftentimes, since they purchase in bulk, it becomes a cheaper purchase for the city. But we are going to do that additional step in the future and let the council decide.
Right, and just to clarify, the joint purchases are exempt from that policy.
Okay, and what was it? What's the percent? I was going to say 8.
For other competitive bidding, it's 5%.
5.
But it's dependent on how much the contract is, so it varies. It goes from 3% to 5%, and then 50,000 on bids over $1 million.
Okay.
So,
all right. Thank you. Does
Thank you.
Answer your question, Councilmember Black?
It does.
Okay. Thank you. Now we'll go back to requesting for a motion on the item presented.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Carrillo. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Painter. Any further discussion? Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have?
No, I was just going to second.
Oh, okay. You just had your light on. I'm sorry. Oh. Okay. You don't have to. It's okay. If everyone will go ahead and vote, please. Councilmember Black, how do you vote?
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0. There are no nays to announce, Madam Clerk. And we move right along to our regular agenda, and we have a single item, item 8A, consideration and action on a resolution establishing the Cannabis Review and Implementation Task Force Committee as requested by City Council. And again, this was a City Council initiative, and we're going to turn it over to Councilmember Carrillo, who's going to give us a bit of an overview, and then we will have a council discussion. Councilmember Carrillo.
Thank you. So for the purposes of sharing with other council members and the public, what I had in mind when I started working on this, the idea and the purpose, there it is. The purpose of the task force is to have a group of subject matter experts and consumers and residents sit down together along with council members so that it really is a collaboration between staff, elected representatives, and the public to evaluate what this policy will mean for our community and what are our best ways to adjust to a new reality. And I said this last time, but to me this isn't a replacement for conversation with constituents or other council members or staff, but rather a complement to those discussions, I think, in a more structured and again, I think a task force lends legitimacy to the work that these folks are already doing and are interested in doing. As proposed, the task force consists of 10 committee members, 2 council members, 2 law enforcement officers, 2 business owners or prospective business owners, 1 addiction specialist, and 3 community representatives. Potentially, this could be 9. Somebody flagged that an odd number perhaps would be better, so that's something that I'm open to if that makes the process easier, or if there isn't strong interest from other council members to be participants in the task force if approved. Come on, clicker. Okay. The timeline, as we've thought of it, is to have appointment of these members as soon as lawfully possible. And I will ask Jeff maybe at the end of this presentation to tell us what that timeline could look like, or maybe Tim can tell us. And then October 21st, the committee of the whole meeting to have a report and presentation on primary issues, contingent on the fact that we could get those folks appointed fairly quickly. My hope is also that this isn't a one and done, but that we can continue to work with this task force to explore some secondary and tertiary issues. And I'll talk a little bit more about this in a second. But for those who are not familiar with what the legislation that was passed and what that will do come January 1st, I thought it would be helpful to have just a very quick overview. But what this will do is it will legalize recreational cannabis for residents 21 years and older, and it will allow them to possess 30 grams of cannabis for personal use and half of that for out-of-state visitors. It will also allow for home cultivation for patients of medical marijuana. Will also include one of the biggest moves to provide clemency and expungement of criminal records to people in our state around cannabis-related offenses. The legislation is like 600 pages, right? So it's a complicated system. We're not talking about just dispensaries. We're talking about infusers and craft growers and major cultivators, and there's a lot of things that have to get figured out, and each of these is going to get rolled out under a different timeline. The last two things I'll mention is the bill also includes a provision for pilot training programs at community colleges for people to be able to enter in this new industry. And I think that's something like interesting that maybe wouldn't have gotten the headline, but is something that we might be interested in pursuing. And then finally, my favorite part of it is the social equity program. So people who are either themselves folks who have been convicted of cannabis-related offenses that would be subject to clemency are going to receive points on their applications to bump them up in the stack of people who receive licenses. It will give them access to a cannabis development fund, essentially money to help them with the startup costs. As part of the social equity program, there will also be a program called 3Rs, which is Restore, Reinvest, and Renew, which will provide funds to community groups that are working with populations that have been most directly affected by the war on cannabis. So I think, again, this is not just a conversation about recreational cannabis use, but actually a major piece of legislation that has the potential to transform a lot of the neighborhoods that have been most affected by this issue. It goes without saying, public consumption is still prohibited and is restricted similarly to alcohol. The last thing I want to do, because one of the questions that came up a lot is like, what's the timeline, right? And I feel a great sense of urgency and have moved a number of different conversations with folks who are saying they need answers from us as soon as possible. So I just wanted to kind of review that. As soon as October 15th, existing medical dispensaries can, as soon as October 15th, applications are available for 75 new dispensaries, but existing medical dispensaries can apply for early approval, and that process is beginning now. They can also request for one additional location. So dispensaries that were already providing cannabis to medical patients are going to be the ones to get first dibs, if you will. By January 1st, medical dispensaries can officially sell recreational, and the state will begin taking applications for new licenses, and will make available licenses for those other categories that are not dispensaries. The licenses will be accepted and they'll be processed by March 15th. This is all per the bill. And by May 1st, they're saying that they will have approved 75 new dispensary licenses. So as you can see, the timeline is pretty crunched. Those applications need to be in, and it's going to be a highly competitive process. So that is why we have a lot of interested parties in the community that are looking to us for direction. Maybe you have heard about the example in Naperville where there was a dispensary who sort of got on stack to get one of these licenses, but then the city decided not to allow a cannabis-related business. So that's the sort of thing that we don't want to have happen here. We want to be able to provide business owners and entrepreneurs a clear direction, and that's how we build a business-friendly environment. So as I mentioned, I do think that there are primary issues, secondary and tertiary issues. I don't want to get into the minutia of what is what, but I do think that some of the most urgent questions that this task force could answer is how should the city should the city allow or prohibit cannabis businesses? That's sort of the simple question. Are we going to allow this in Bloomington? How should the city regulate it? How should the city tax it? And whether the city will allow on-site consumption at cannabis-related business establishments. Those feel like the most urgent, based on that timeline, the most urgent questions that we need to give direction on. But I do think my interest in this not being a one and done is based on the fact that there's a lot of other questions out there. And more questions will emerge as this gets rolled out. There are challenges that we can't even foresee yet that will come up once this legislation is enacted, and I want us to address those issues in the spirit of collaboration with our council, with our residents, and with our staff. And so I think probably at 10 minutes. Oh, no, wow, coming in early.
Coming under budget. We
So
love
that's,
that.
yeah, that's all I got. If folks have questions, happy to take them.
Just two things, and I'm looking to Jeff just to clarify. First of all, it's not so much the first part, but the second one. First, we do not make the determination of who gets the licenses. And the other thing is, it is the case that the Bloomington Normal Metro area only gets one more. I mean, other than the fact that an existing dispensary can add a dispensary, there can only be one brand new
I believe you're
dispensary
talking
in
about
all
the
Bloomington Normal and DeWitt County.
pilot program of 75, and so out of that, the Bloomington area has been designated one, and that area includes all of McLean County and DeWitt County.
So there is no guarantee that we would even have one in Bloomington.
And that's the pilot program. I don't know after that how much,
Right.
It'll open up, but that's the initial.
Yeah, so the thought is it's divided up per region. So like this region, the Bloomington region, so Bloomington and surrounding areas would get one, but that's all supposed to be done by May 1st of 2020. So beyond that is when they will do a market study and determine how many more licenses they're going to issue, and so potentially there could be more.
Can I ask a question?
Of course, Councilmember Black.
I'm sorry, I don't want to cut in front of somebody else if they got their light on.
I didn't see any other lights on, and so go ahead. We
Yeah.
haven't asked you, so we'll start with you this time.
Cool. I guess I'm curious. The question I think in front of us is whether or not we support a task force and not necessarily some of the things that we're going into details about, correct?
Correct. This is just do we have established a task force? And I'll let Councilmember Carrillo correct me or add to this, but do we establish a task force of business people and others, an addiction, someone with an expert in addiction, another group of 10 people to help study and vet some of these issues?
Right. Okay, yeah, that's my understanding.
Correct.
Jen, am I wrong?
Add to that?
Yeah. I mean, I think that the purpose of this was to provide some context, especially as there are questions about, well, how urgent is this really? Wanted to provide some context for what is in the legislation that the state passed that would inform how we conduct that process here locally. But yes, the question on the table is just, should we establish a task force to look into these things?
And you had a pretty aggressive timeline for them to complete their work.
Yes.
Correct. Councilmember Bray.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Alderwoman Carrillo, for your presentation. I've carefully studied your resolution, which includes various features of a proposed task force, and I'm struggling with why this is a good tool to get us to consensus as a council that is elected by the people on a ward basis to represent our separate wards and bring all of our best efforts and our representation role of those groups together and work an issue together. And I'm asking that not for an answer, I'm asking that for all of us to ponder that, because this, not unlike any other tough, complex issue, will require all hands on deck. It will require each of us to make ourselves familiar with the decision points in play, and we have processes in place to do that. We've hired city staff to help us do that. We have attorneys to walk us through the details. And I don't think that the tool that is a downtown task force that would cut away this role, and you've proposed that yourself, Councilmember Carrillo, would be the chairman of such task force, along with only one other council member, and the rest of the people that would be added would be people of your and the mayor's selection, but that would have to come about with the approval of council. I don't see how that is a very expeditious process to bring us to consensus, because at the end of the day, what will happen in Bloomington will be what is approved or not approved by the city council. So the hard work of developing consensus among ourselves need to start, and it needs to start right away. And I would say to you that we have a process in place through our 3-in-1 meetings, through our committee of the whole work, and through the talents of our excellent staff, our city manager and our deputy city manager, to work us all together through these issues, because this isn't a one and done. We'll have to continue to work and understand these issues for some time to come, as the legislature will continue to pass regulations and continue to inform the citizens of Illinois and the municipalities operating therein of all the other regulations that accompany this. So I see this as perhaps a tool that could be used at some time as we're walking through some of this at some time later. But the fundamental questions about where we want to be right now, whether we'll opt in or we'll well, we won't have to opt in, but whether or not we'll opt out, and what kind of vision we have for community, I think those are things that we need to do our sweat equity first before any task force subcommittee is formed, and therefore I think that this is premature, and I won't be supporting it. Thank you.
Just as a quick correction, you meant Cannabis Task Force, not Downtown Task Force?
Thank you. I did mean the Cannabis Task Force.
Cannabis, okay. Thank you. Councilmember Boland.
Well, I'd like to read from the IML a
course.
little bit, because they talk about boards, which this would be, and as we all know, it's very difficult to get consensus on this with 9 people here, and then if you add the mix of 10 more, it could end up being too many cooks in the kitchen, and trying to sort through everything would be difficult. And then it goes on to say, while some can be quite dedicated, others often skip and miss meetings or do not adequately prepare. Committees may often have limited or singular vision associated with an issue, while the board is responsible for balancing many competing demands, which is the council is responsible for the big picture. And at the end of the day, the committee members may have hard feelings if the council doesn't approve what they present, and I've seen that happen locally. And I'm really adamant that we are thoughtful, methodical, and careful in our decision making. The city council just spent almost 2 years trying to rein in the proliferation of video gaming terminals. So I don't want to go in that direction. The devil is in the details, and again, if we opt in, we've got to focus on those details. Concerning how many dispensaries there are, if there's only 1 or 2 and it's not in Bloomington, eventually, potentially, the market will figure out who gets what and how much revenue will happen. As far as the 3-on-1s go, I would rather have the police department and public health and the business community come and present everything to the entire council rather than, I want to hear it firsthand. I don't want to hear it through the grapevine, which often happens with a task force. You get things summarized and secondhand. I think that links can be sent, articles can be sent. We are perfectly capable of reading information ourselves, even stuff that comes from the state, the legislative information. And this coming Wednesday, I'm going to be attending the Chamber of Commerce meeting, which is addressing cannabis and how it affects the local businesses. And I think that, too, that is the work that the council needs to do, go out into the community and collect that information and discuss things with the business community at large. It affects everybody. This is going to affect everybody. And as far as zoning is concerned, I'm wondering if the zoning shouldn't go before the Planning Commission to make we brought beehives and chickens before the Planning Commission. I think that cannabis, it would be appropriate to go before the Planning Commission to decide where it should be placed. Should it be placed in every corner, or should it be placed only in the quadrants of the city? I mean, those questions would have to be addressed, and I think the Planning Commission as a statutory commission would be a good place to place that discussion. I will be voting no on this.
Alderman Miller, one point.
Okay. So first of all, I want to say thank you to Councilmember Carrillo for bringing forth the idea. I think it certainly gives us an opportunity to think about the kinds of things that need to be considered. Just to give you a little bit of history, given my 8 years on on the council in the past, I'm not too fond of task forces, just based on our past experience. When I go back, I remember that at one point, and some of this will kind of piggyback on some of the things that others have said already, but we used to have at one point we had smaller committees, finance committee. We also had an infrastructure committee, if I remember. Mm-hmm. And at some point, we disbanded those committees and decided to do a committee of the whole because people preferred hearing the same information at the same time rather than having these small committees. There was an issue of trust, in my opinion, because people were not at some of those meetings and would talk about the fact that they weren't 100% confident in what had been said or what had been afforded to them. And of course, that was before I think we had video service, I guess. So that's one thing. The other thing that I think would also be concerning is that, whenever you have too many decision points, I think you're going to have too many opportunities for disagreement. I think not that it's bad, but it can make the process a little bit more cumbersome. I think we've worked pretty hard as a council to come to a point where I see us making decision in a way that is a lot more disciplined. And I'd like to keep that. And I would say, thanks to the city manager who has brought an approach that I think works fairly well. 3-on-1s, but also, committee of the whole for everyone to hear some of that information when the staff thinks that it is ready. So you also have to think about the fact that, at the legislature level, if my understanding is correct, that they do have quite a bit of staff who work on the finer details of whatever legislation. They have a legislative research unit, that comes up with a lot of the different things that the legislature is going to have to consider. So I like to see us, I think we've done that with video gambling, although on a smaller scale, but I'd like to see us replicate, I thought although there was a little bit of controversy with video gambling, which is not, which can't be avoided, but I think still the ultimate product, worked out fairly well. So I think that's something that we should definitely consider. And I would also echo what's been said already, is that when you do have, this is where my preference for staff working on it comes to mind, is that when you do have volunteers working on issues that are so important, you cannot always guarantee that people will have the same level of commitment. Whereas the staff is here, 40 hours a week, for some 80. But I think there is commitment, there is accountability there, and we can always go back to them when something is not working properly. Okay, and they can be held accountable by the city manager. The same cannot be said about volunteers. People come and go, and their life changes. So that's something that we definitely have to consider. I want to make sure I didn't forget anything here. And again, to go back in history, to me, we really had quite a bit of difficulty, in my opinion. I didn't hear, in many cases, I heard negative things about, how things worked out with previous task forces that we had, downtown task force. What's the other one we had? Budget task force. It just was not a very pleasant thing for people to go through. And in addition, the choices, I think there will also be, and as you've seen, we've had some back and forth about the choices of appointees, for committees. So that, I think, it's something else that's going to be, that could be contentious. You could get members of the public questioning, why is this person on the task force, why is that person not on the task force, and those kinds of things. So I think, in my opinion, it's just better, to get us, let the staff work on it, and come up with a because they've shown, at least on looking at video gambling, they've shown that they can do that. So I think I would prefer that we let them work on it, and then, then we get a chance to react. That's just my opinion.
Okay. Just to clarify, first of all, I think that one wouldn't necessarily preclude the other. Staff is going to have to be involved, and there's no question about it. We're going to have to be ultimately the people who make the final choice in that and the other ones. Although I don't necessarily think I agree with you in terms of the characterization of the two task forces, but obviously there are differences of opinion. Councilmember Matthey. Jeff? Okay. Jeff, and then?
Thank you, Alderwoman Carrillo, on your presentation. And one of the things I want us as a council to refer back to, a couple months ago, we passed a resolution that supported Connect Transit creating a working group. And some of us have attended those working group meetings, and everyone on that working group was asked to be on there, and they're all very dedicated to what they're doing. And we decided to wait on what they did before we make decisions on Connect Transit. So we have supported something like a task force with regard to the working group for Connect Transit. And it's also going to be part of it's going to be subject to the Open Meetings Act. So we can all attend that. We can all be up to date on what happens. It's not going to be anything that's done in secret. Also, I think it was said, I mean, the task force, what they do doesn't have to take away from what each of us as council members could do and should be doing. For instance, I'm having a listening session this Friday, and one of these topics I'm sure will be cannabis, and so I'm proceeding forward. I'm also proceeding forward on other issues that are concerned to me, like expungement and how, as a community, we can promote that. I know Alderwoman Painter, you sent an article, and people have talked about the many questions that there are. And to me, that makes sense to have a task force to address those questions. I know we have 3-on-1 sessions, and I know we have committee of the whole, but if we start today and we expect to have recommendations to us, I think October 21st, we're going to need more than that, right? We're not, if we decide not to have the task force, we're not going to be able to do everything that we need to do. Also, Alderwoman Boland, you mentioned the gaming. I think, and I wasn't on council, so this could be misspeaking, but we didn't have a task force then. It kind of was just passed and things happened. But if we use a comprehensive approach, which is what the task force can do, we can avoid some of the issues, I think, that we had with video gaming machines. Let me see if there's anything else. And also this task force, another key thing is it's not going to be one and done. It's going to, so we will be able to address the issues that come up, even after January 1st. So I will be voting yes.
Thank you, Alderman Mathey.
You're doing very well.
Yes, thank you. I try hard.
Thank you. So I wanted to basically say that I agree with many of the things that Jeff just said, that I don't think that the task force and having a task force precludes all the other work that I think that we should be doing as council members at the same time. I think that we can still be having 3-on-1s. I think we can still go to, a bunch of us are going to, well, I'm not going to make it this year, but a bunch of folks are going to IML to talk to. I'm sure this is going to be a huge topic this year there. We can do our due diligence reading. We can talk to residents and listening sessions, town halls, all those sorts of things. I don't think that having one stops us from doing the other one. And, as I said last time, my goal is to make sure that we, as quickly as possible, get to a point where we can get some sort of an educated, intelligible answer to developers in our community who want to move the ball forward. Where we've heard that we just heard from Jeff that we are only going to be allowed one additional dispensary in the area during the test period, and like I said, I've had 3 different developers at this point who have approached me about it. So I guess that means one of those 3 right now, or somebody else is potentially going to get that dispensary license, and I would like them to all have an equal shot of, we have intelligent, rational decisions that have been made. So I would like to see us go down both paths of council doing their due diligence at the same time as the task force is doing its due diligence. It keeps the topic moving. It forces a timeline where we can get information, because right now there's a lot of things we don't know what we don't know. The only thing that we do know is the state doesn't know much, and that's not a new situation for us to be in. But I'll be voting yes to this because I think both things can happen at the same time, and we can get more information faster. We've relied on our committees many times to, quote unquote, do our homework for us and go out and find information and bring it back. But we have never felt beholden to any of those committees to do exactly what they recommended. We've overturned liquor commission decisions. We've overturned or gone a different direction on zoning commissions, on planning, on transportation. So getting more information faster would be my goal. And I think that the task force could be one of those ways that helps us get to having more information to make educated decisions.
Councilmember Emi.
Could someone answer for me what needs to be decided by when that will affect our community directly? Because I've looked at these timelines, but it's hard to sometimes decipher.
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. To some degree, there's a lot of different balls up in the air on this. But I think Councilmember Carrillo, with the timeline that she had up there, had a lot of good information on it. The first thing that's going to come up is these pre-qualification applications that we talked about, and I think that's the ones that will be available in October. That they're not going to be decided upon until next year, but that application process has started. And I think part of the questions that they're going to have to answer includes, is there proper zoning for this business? So right away, we're going to have to start with, the zoning questions, the special uses, those types of things. So those are early on questions that will have to be answered. And this assumes, again, that the council, is interested in permitting this and allowing it and not, strictly regulating, it. But having those core decisions about the zoning is really the first one. Taxing is another issue that is going to have to be decided upon fairly soon in terms of, are you going to enact the municipal tax that can be placed on the sale of cannabis? So those are a couple of key issues as far as what I can tell from the research that I've done and the conversations that I've had with staff, and there might be other ones that you would add to that list, but those are two key ones.
And in terms of municipalities having an option to opt out, does that have to be determined by December 25th, or we're automatically opted in?
So that's another good question. There's not clear language in the Act about kind of opting out. It's just in terms of your ability to restrict locations. So most of the draft municipal league ordinance that came out on this, those municipalities that are adopting that are utilizing that language and saying they're prohibiting it at any location, and they're declaring it a public nuisance, and they're prohibiting it that way. I'm not sure that there is an exact time frame on when that would have to be adopted by, but that'd be something I'd have to look at.
Jeff, I'll just add real quick that there was an article in the Tribune that said it was 180 days from when the governor signed the law on June 25th. So the Tribune published that. Whether or not that's accurate, I don't know, but it's out there.
Yeah. Okay. Councilmember Carrillo, you're okay? Anyone?
Are you done? I'll come back, but I'm
okay. Yeah, don't you have
Can I weigh in?
Okay, all right. You haven't spoken yet, so yeah.
Point of order.
Councilmember, yeah.
We need a motion to extend the time, Mayor.
Okay. Do we have a motion to extend the time?
For?
Let's say 10 minutes.
So moved.
Okay. Moved by Councilmember Carrillo, second by Councilmember Carrillo. And Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Mathey? Yes. Councilmember Bolin?
Yes.
Councilmember Milwamwe?
Yes.
Councilmember Emig?
Yes.
Councilmember Painter?
Yes.
Councilmember Carrillo?
Yes.
Councilmember Black?
Yes.
Councilmember Crable?
Yes.
Councilmember Bray?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Black, since you haven't spoken yet, we'll go and then we'll come back here.
Yeah, I got a couple questions for Jeff real quick. Jeffrey on the podium.
Yes.
Yeah, so just to be clear, does the council have to, or is obligated or legally required to adopt any of the recommendations of the task force?
No, this will be a purely recommending body. That will receive recommendations from the task force that the council can then either adopt or not adopt.
Gotcha. And I was looking at the resolution itself, and it was a little unclear about the time frame in which this task force work will be concluded. It seemed that it was going to be kind of in existence until the council decided otherwise. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes. Currently it says it'll be in existence until the work is concluded and discontinued by further resolution of the City Council. So essentially the City Council would decide that the work of the task force is completed and would end it at that time.
So in essence, if we got a report back in, say, the October time frame, we could, at the subsequent meeting, end the task force at that point,
Yes.
if we saw fit.
Yes.
Yes? I'm sorry, that's what you said.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so the way that I look at this issue is, thank you again, Jeff, and thank you, Jen, for the work that you've done on this. I've had a lot of folks over the last few days come tell me that I should oppose the task force. And so in the interest of transparency, I'll just kind of tell you the same thing that I told them, which is that the way I look at this is this. At the end of the day, if this task force produces a report, in the best case scenario, that is wonderful, provides us with lots of recommendations and a robust community discussion, that's the best case scenario for me. We could adopt those resolutions, we could ignore those resolutions, we could change them. We're trying to get them back from the table. If the task force comes back with no recommendations or kind of muddled information or things that are not helping us make policy decisions, then that's what it is, and we can end the task force at that point. So for me, I continue to hear us talk about how we can better engage the public, and this is a new and unique way of doing it. I'm fine with having a task force, seeing what comes back. More information is always better from where I sit. If I'm not happy with what the recommendations are, or I disagree with them, I can ultimately ignore them, and the council can do the same. And if we're unhappy with the task force itself, we can end it at any point in time. So from where I sit, this is a low-risk, high-opportunity task force. I'm excited to see what comes back, and the work will need to be done on our end, but also their end as well, and always look forward to engaging with the community on these complex issues.
Okay. Anything else?
I don't know if there's a motion or anything on the
No,
table.
there's not yet. No, I just wanted to clarify. I didn't want to cut you off if you were still thinking. Okay, thank you. And then just to clarify, in terms of any kind of appointments, anytime you have a question about why someone was appointed, you can always direct them to the mayor. It's the mayor's fault. Okay. Councilmember Painter.
Thank you. In the beginning, I was all for this. I'm very interested in what you have to come up with. And then I read the resolution, and it says that this will have the weight of an ad hoc committee, that the mayor will make the appointments, and it will be a formal thing. And I have seen too many of these task forces blow up, and it just gets everybody fighting, and people that are pulled in and give their opinions think that, that should rule the day, and it often doesn't. I think that this will slow things down and gum up the works. If this had been like your task force for the State Farm Building, great. I'm very interested in what the outcome of that is. But to go down the road of another task force formally like this, I think it's a bad idea. This is a job for our staff. They need to dig into this and give us updates periodically, not just one presentation. That way, we can steer them in the right direction if they're going off in the wrong direction. The staff has a 600-page bill to dig into and a writer that's coming along, too, to wrap their heads around. And we need to do that, too. Also, the IML has put forth a lot of directives on this that we all need to read and discuss amongst ourselves. As I said, each and every one of us needs to delve into this and share the information that we find with everyone. 9 heads on the council is better than 2. Leaving this in the hands of an ad hoc committee, I think will just slow things down. Meanwhile, I would like us to share any articles or anything that we find with one another, work together on this. I think that the way that we work together on the video gambling terminals really worked out very well. And, I think that's the way we should go. I will be voting against this.
Okay. Let's see. I think I saw Councilmember Bray, and then Councilmember Carrillo.
Thank you, Mayor. So as I sit here, I'm not sure exactly where everyone is as far as what our actual number will be, yes or no, but it's clear it'll be close. And when I think about what we need to accomplish with this cannabis initiatives and all that's to come on this, I think we really need to lead with our strengths. And one of our strengths is that we have the ability to enter into consensus and work together. We've seen it, we've done it, we can do it again. But here now, this very first piece out the gate is a task force for which we're already divided. And I see this task force taking us in a direction that would be more about conflict than consensus. And I would just encourage you, even if you've felt like you were for this, to rethink that, because again, we've got to have a good beginning, a good middle, and a good end. But I think it's very important that we start from a point of strength and consensus. And again, perhaps there is a time when some very focused looks at certain kinds of initiatives that are going to be part of this cannabis landscape would benefit from this kind of activity. But we are not there yet. We haven't had an opportunity to even sit down with our city attorney and walk through the materials as a group that we've received from the IML. I think that would be beneficial. We need to take the opportunity to consent around whether or not we're an opt-out city. I mentioned to some of you right before this meeting that we've learned now that Naperville will be an opt-out community. I think we need to find out why. We've looked at Naperville in the past as a city that maybe had some good ideas that we could implement here in Bloomington. So I'd like to know why this city that has a quality of life for many of its citizens decided no to cannabis. And we have the unique opportunity, many of us, to be at IML and have some discussions with them this month. So again, I would just urge you to just take a look at how this already is not bringing us to consensus, and again, adopt a consensus model, which is working with our staff in an efficient manner to proceed on this issue that is of great importance to our community. Thank you for listening.
Councilmember Carrillo.
Yeah, I think consensus is a really valuable thing, and I've appreciated when we've been able to work together. This is an issue that's important to a lot of people and that people have a lot of mixed feelings about, so I don't know that there is a way to avoid division. Right now we're having a conversation about what's the process to get us to the conversation, but like when that conversation happens, I'm fairly sure that that division will continue to exist because of our varying perspectives. So, you know, I would echo what Scott said in terms of, you know, having all hands on deck and having more information to get us to a point where we can make an informed decision, especially because we are not bound to the recommendations that would come out of this task force. But also, I think that there's like a philosophical issue at stake here, which is about like who deserves a seat at the table. And I appreciate the wisdom and leadership of everybody that's around this table, but I think our role here is to engage everyday people, our residents, to truly be a part of the process and not in lip service and not in a way that's superficial, but in a way that is real. And I'm not scared to give power to our residents to help inform us on how to make decisions. I think that that's how democracy works best, and that's what I was elected to do. So I would encourage folks to reflect on that, and I'd like to move that we approve as presented.
Okay. Actually, on perfect timing, because we just ran out of time. We have a motion. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have it?
I'll make the motion at the end of this.
Okay. I wonder if you could second it and then make your comment.
Oh, sure. I second.
Okay. Now make your comment. Thanks.
Thank you for the clarification on process, as always.
Sorry.
It's important. I feel now that there's probably even greater urgency to have some more knowledge come to us while we think about what we need to know to make these decisions. What I like about this ordinance is that it includes members of the community who have some expertise, that we have some content specialists who will weigh in. I wonder in the question about whether or not there would be a 10th person, if perhaps someone from the city could also be a participant, as well as potentially even do some co-chairing. You know, so there's more of a sense that this is a process in which we are producing a document that really is about communicating the information that will help us make better decisions. If this were going to be introduced at a meeting in which we're voting, that would be problematic, but it's coming before the committee of the whole. It's coming quickly, and I trust this council to be able to have an informed discussion about it and maybe take light of some of the recommendations and bring them to bear into solidifying our approach here, and as well as considering other points that we decide, no, this isn't something that we want to develop into the ordinance around the consensus that we're trying to build. I don't know if I'm allowed to ask this, but is it...
Just get anything.
I note that whenever we vote on something, there's a recommendation from the staff, and this is no different. This has been recommended as a yay, and I wonder, no, that's not correct. That's why I'm asking.
This is an aldermanic request that seemed to have the support of council members to talk about, not necessarily to propose it.
This is why I ask these questions, because I need to know.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you have something to say, or did you want to extend time? Because we're well beyond our time now again.
So I'll make a motion to extend for 10 minutes.
Okay, 10 minutes?
10 minutes
Okay.
discussion for 10 minutes.
Okay. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Boland. Madam Clerk, could you call the roll?
Councilmember Mathey.
Yes.
Councilmember Boland.
Yes.
Councilmember Mwambwe.
Yes.
Councilmember Emig.
Yes.
Councilmember Painter.
Yes.
Councilmember Carrillo.
Yes.
Councilmember Black.
Yes.
Councilmember Crable.
Yes.
Councilmember Gray.
Yes.
Okay. Just on that note, if we could note here, from my perspective, I would say that we're going to get the same kinds of inputs regardless of that. But this does seem to me, I would be remiss if I didn't say we are so process obsessed on this, and we spent all this time, we're extending it again, and we're going to get the same kinds of inputs. But on that, I will turn this over to Councilmember Bray.
Well, thank you for that, Mayor, but I do disagree with that characterization of the discussion we've had here today. And additionally, I will disagree because the point that I'd like to make right now is that this was a resolution that was submitted by one of the alderpersons, and there are several pieces of it that if a task force is going to be created, there are many moving parts that are set out in this resolution, and I'd like for us to visit about what is the process to amend what has been proposed. In particular, establishing a task force that has no beginning and no end, well, it has a beginning, but has no end, is a very poor practice. So you would not do that in the world of the law. You don't do that with something like this. So I've heard some discussions from folks about they'd like to hear give it a shot, go at it for a month and let us know how it goes. So maybe if there's an appetite to go forward with the task force, maybe it's a 60-day window. We establish it for 60 days, we see what can be accomplished, and then we decide whether or not we want to re-up with the task force. Secondly, so hold on to that, Jeff, a minute. And then secondly, in Section 2, Alderwoman Carrillo has nominated herself to be the chair of this task force. And with all due respect, Councilmember Carrillo, you've sat before this body and told us that you're very interested in developing a tourism for cannabis here in Bloomington. And I just question whether you have the kind of neutrality that a chair for this kind of role would have. And so, perhaps we need to talk about, if we have a task force, who is an appropriate chair. So, Jeff, could you talk a little bit about how we would amend or discuss that? And
or just actually to clarify, because there's a Supreme Court case that you and I were talking about. Council doesn't have, unless you change your form of government, the authority to name members to boards and commissions. Is that correct?
That's right. But I think your question was on the term of the resolution.
We'll talk about the term, and then how do we make amendments to
Yeah, so this can be amended.
resolution?
This can be amended like any other ordinance or resolution. The term in these task force, I think we've had different language on different terms. So this may have even been a carryover language. I don't remember, but it can certainly be amended like any other document. So.
Thank you.
Councilmember Matthey.
So, changing a little bit, my question was going to be to Tim is, in order to keep this conversation rolling, I don't know what we have scheduled next week for the Committee of the Whole, and I was wondering if we could add this to that Committee of the Whole, and specifically maybe a review of some of the proposed documents that IML has put forward to talk about what's in those, but I'm not sure what we have. That's where I was going with it, to keep the conversation moving, is could we add this onto next week's Committee of the Whole, or is that too fast?
I'll do whatever I'm told, but if I had a choice, we're talking about next Monday, the agenda goes out, Thursday, close of business. If it was something just walking through some of the documents, yes, we can do that. If it's something this council would prefer that, I think everybody gets the IML notices, but if you would like me to collect those and share them with everybody in one document with several attachments, I can do that as well. But if you tell me to put together a presentation, I can put something together.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Boland and then Painter.
I guess this is procedural, along the lines of amending. Could a motion be made to amend now?
Yes.
And then go forward?
Yeah. This would be the time to do
Okay.
that. Right.
Yeah, I would like to strike out a specific name that in the, like, Alderperson Carrillo. Just that 2 council members, without a name, because you will be bringing them forward and then approve them. And also the end point. I don't think it should go on forever until we resolve to end it. And the third point is I have a little bit of trouble with potential business owners being on the task force because of a conflict, possibly, conflict of interest, that they would be formulating and presenting to council something that they would benefit from. So I would like to amend those 3 points. I don't know how you would go about doing that.
So
I'd like to second that.
Yeah. Okay. So essentially, but let's clarify what you're seconding.
I'm aware of what.
You're no name in the
no
resolution.
name. Right. And as Mr. Juergens has said, the mayor is not responsible, is not bound by that anyway.
No, but it's in there, and before I vote on anything, I don't want a name in
no name,
the
and then a
resolution.
date. Do you have a date certain? Let's say 90 days?
Sure, 90 days.
90 days from
Fine.
its passage?
Right.
Okay.
And
Is
then,
that okay with the seconder? Okay.
Okay, and then the third one is, I think there's a recommendation to have prospective businessmen or business people.
It says 2 business owners and prospective business owners. Are
Not
you just
necessarily people who are...
just? Yeah, I guess the
Well,
clarification would be.
to me, it's assumed that it's related to the prospective cannabis business.
We can clarify that.
I mean, I guess that would need to be clarified.
Okay. Well,
Where it just be like 2 business owners or 4 business owners, but,
It's 2 business owners.
okay. But the perspective, I think, the word perspective should not be included.
I'm sorry, the word perspective...
Should not be included, should not be an adjective for business.
Okay. We're clear?
Yes, I'm
You're okay with
seconding that. And so what I understand that to be is that if there is a business owner that has an interest in starting the cannabis business, that would not be a person that would be appropriately on this. Instead, we're looking for people who have business acumen and understanding of how business works in Bloomington to give guidance and input without regard to their financial own pecuniary interests, which I think is a very good idea because we don't want a conflict here with this work. We need to have people step in and work on these initiatives that aren't predisposed and are not seeking to create the world according to their own agendas.
Okay. If I
I
could
will
clarify
second
would
Thank you.
what would that preclude someone who currently has a site because they can't benefit from this?
Could you repeat that question?
Would it be someone, like the dispensary in Normal? Actually, I guess they're not.
They're not in Bloomington.
Yeah, they're not in Bloomington. They don't live in Bloomington. Never mind.
You understand? I mean, you understand
Oh, no,
the
it's just
philosophy or principle behind this.
Sure.
I just don't want any optics of conflict, much less reality of conflict. And I think the business, having a business owner, also brings forward his perspective with use by his employees. You know, won't be on the job, but, you know, at home before they come to work. And I think that's basically what's going to be happening at the chamber. It's that kind of discussion that will be happening at the Chamber of Commerce on Wednesday.
Okay.
So,
Alderman Carrillo, and then again, this has to be with respect to the amendment that was made.
Yeah, I would like to just urge us to take a vote because we're running out of time, and I think that for all the talk around divisiveness, this is people see what is happening here.
Okay.
So,
all right. Okay. Can we just? All right. Can everybody go ahead and vote? This is on the amendment. This is not on the substance. This is just on the amendment that was proposed by Councilmember Boland, seconded by Councilmember Bray. So if you'll go ahead and vote. Why isn't it showing? Okay, I've only got 2 people voting. If everybody will go ahead. Yes. And Councilmember Black, how do you vote on that?
wait, I'm confused. Yeah.
You're voting on the amendment.
The amendment. On the amendment.
On the amendment only, right. That's what that's it. Councilmember Black?
Yeah, the time box component and then the removal of the name.
Scott, we can't hear you. Can you say, what did you say?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah, so this it's the removal of the name and then the time frame of 90 days. Did I hear that correctly?
That's correct.
Yeah, I'm voting yeah on that.
Okay. All right. That passes 6-2. Madam Clerk, there were 2 nays to announce, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Crable, we don't have yours on there.
Oh, sorry. Okay. It passes 6-3. There are 3 nays to announce, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Councilmember Emig, Councilmember Carrillo, and Councilmember Crable.
Okay. All right, so the motion, excuse me. There we go. Motion carries, and we go back to the main motion now as amended. So it would have remove the name, and it is a 60-day time period for, excuse me, 90. Sorry about that. 90-day time period for its existence. If everyone will go ahead and vote on this. Alderman Black, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Black? Alderman Black? We can't hear you.
Sorry, it's my stupid Bluetooth. Sorry. Yes.
You vote yes. Okay, the motion carries 6-3. There are 3 nays to announce, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Boland, Councilmember Milwamble, Councilmember Bray.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, motion carried, and we move right along. And we move right along to our city manager's discussion. Mr. Gleason, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Scott, do we have the events for the upcoming week or 2? And then also what I want to share with Council and the community, press release that we kicked out as a city just right before Council put this together about 5 o'clock. Public hearings regarding S4 consideration for downtown State Farm building no longer anticipated for September 19th. Let's see, public hearings regarding S4 consideration for downtown State Farm building originally anticipated for Thursday, September 19th. Historic Preservation Commission meeting will not take place at this time. The nominating form submitted by Greg Coos has been withdrawn. This is in recognition of the welcome sale of the building to the Historic Building Redevelopment Company. Greg Koo states in a letter to myself. Given Friday's great news regarding the building's pending sale, this is absolutely the right move, adds myself. It is the city's wish to support the sale and redevelopment of this building, however, is appropriate, and this meets that goal. A hearing for another S4 nomination for the State Farm Building has been tabled by the Historic Preservation Commission Chairperson Leah Klein, pending the building sale. The Historic Preservation meeting will still take place on September 19th at 5 p.m., so the Commission may consider other items. So I wanted to share that. I think that's good news. And then also on next week for the Committee of the Whole, we have 3 items, at least at this point. Venue Works is going to give their annual financial update report to Council and the community. Number 2, likely going to put together a Public Works, the Water Division, presentation to the Council and the community regarding the building that we're proposing to be replaced after the fire out at Lake Bloomington. And then lastly, some sort of cannabis update, and I'll be taking care of that one. I'll pull together everything we know at this point from the Illinois Municipal League. It's the primary source, but I'll look to others as well, and we'll do that on Monday night.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And again, thank you, Mr. Gleason. Literally the day before the announcement, Mr. Gleason and I met with the head vice presidents of State Farm, and we had a few strands of hope, but not a whole lot. And then the heavens opened up, and we got a great break. And this is a wonderful news, certainly, for our entire community. But in addition to that, excuse me, let me grab my glasses here. I want to thank everyone who participated in the Festival of Chariots, which was yesterday. It's my 7th time participating, and it's just really a wonderful event. I would highly recommend that everyone come out. At least it has been the last 6 years in Milner Park, and this time it was not hot. Whereas it's usually in June and July, and it's hot. Yesterday was perfect weather, except for the fact we got rained on a little bit. But other than that, it's definitely something that represents the cultural diversity of our community that we should be doing our best to embrace. And also, I want to thank those who put together the first Pisgah Fest at Mount Pisgah. And I can tell you there were people who got in line to dunk me in the dunk tank. I didn't doubt that would be the case. And so anyway, I look forward to having that happen again next year. And I do want to say that since this was approved, those of you who have ideas, and I won't be able to take everybody's, of course, because we're only talking about 10 people. But if you've got some specific people that you think would be good, and if you could just mention why you think they'd be good for the task force, please let me know, because I would intend to do this very, very quickly, because I think it was pretty clear one thing we agreed on as a council was this needs to happen fast. And so if you've got people, or if you yourself are interested, I hate to say that only because there's 2 slots, so there would be potentially 7 people who are mad at me. But anyway, if you'd let me know that as soon as possible, I'd appreciate that. So that's all I have at this point. Aldermanic comments, and I'll start around the die. Oh, start at this end.
Mayor, I just wanted to say that I'm a little bit sad I didn't get a chance to throw balls and dunk you in the tank.
There were plenty of people who took care of that.
I also just wanted to say that say thank you to everybody who helped organize and participate in the Labor Day parade, because that was an amazing event. And I think the longest it's ever been. I got to carry the flags at the beginning again, and I walked all the way back through the parade, stopped and talked to many people, I was walking home, and the people at the end of the parade still hadn't started moving yet. So I just thought it was like a perfect day for a parade. Tons of people were out, and it was just a great community celebration type event. So,
thank you. I was focusing on the most recent stuff. Thank you, Alderman Matthey. Councilmember Crayville.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple things. On September 18th, the Small Business Development Center will be hosting a session on a veteran resource workshop on helping veterans start businesses. So if you are a veteran, know a veteran, let them know that. And then I will be having a listening session, as I mentioned, this Friday, 4:30 in the Fishbowl over here. So you don't have to be from Ward 8. Anybody can come, and there's no particular agenda, whatever you want to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Anything else? Okay. Oh, one last thing. I'll follow the tradition we've had in the task forces before, and that is I did not suggest anybody as a chair. So the task forces themselves chose whoever the chair would be. And then I'll continue that with this. I don't see any reason not to. At this point, do we have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councilmember Matthews. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconder-in-chief. Second by Councilmember Millawamway. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Can stay. Okay.